Missing person cases involving celebrities who are still missing today are a rare occurrence. But there are a number of these cases that have never been solved, despite the fact that they lived their lives in the limelight and were constantly in the public eye. Some famous people vanish without a trace, and their whereabouts still remain unsolved mysteries. The mysterious disappearance of Daniel Lind Lagerlöf is one that is still well remembered in his home country of Sweden, where he found fame as a director, screenwriter, and producer. Lagerlöf's career began in television, working as an assistant, but by 1990, he had directed his first film called The Performance. 7 years later, he started working on a hugely successful series called The Archipelago Doctor, which ran until the year 2000, after which he worked on several more films before ultimately returning to television. The last completed series that he worked on was called The Library Thief, which was written by his wife, Malin, who was a screenwriter in her own right, and who often created projects that Lagerlöf then directed. On the 6th of October 2011, Lagerlöf was in a nature reserve where he was scouting locations for the latest project he was working on. The series was a depiction of the best-selling crime franchise written by Camilla Lackberg. During scouting for the series, Lagerlöf, who was accompanied by 2 crew members, decided to split from the group in search of a scenic backdrop. Heavy rains and high winds were expected to hit the area, but he insisted on making his own way, and unfortunately was never seen or heard from again. Swedish police conducted a search that lasted for 2 days with the help of search dogs and helicopters, but no trace of him was ever found. It's presumed that he slipped while exploring the cliffs in the nature reserve and was swept away by the ocean. Some people have speculated that he jumped, but since there's no indication that he was unhappy, and no evidence has been found to support the theory, it seems very unlikely. Not a trace of Lagerlöf was ever found, and his disappearance will seemingly remain an unsolved mystery forever. At the time of his strange disappearance in 1955, Weldon Kees was 41 years old. He had been involved in many aspects of the art world, as he was a known poet, painter, playwright, novelist, literary critic, short story writer, jazz pianist, and filmmaker. His poetry, which was written in the same era as works by John Berryman and Robert Lowell, is considered immensely important, since it influenced many next-generation poets, and the publication of the first ever book that he wrote, called The Last Man, was noted by literary critic Harold Bloom as a very important event. During July of 1955, Kees had been working at Langley Porter and was spending time in the company of a woman named Virginia Patterson, who was a psychiatrist. But as with many of his other relationships, it didn't last long, due to his habit of taking illegal substances, which caused him to suffer from bouts of manic depression and exacerbated his bipolar disorder. He then decided to visit his parents and a friend, literary critic Hugh Kenner, in Santa Barbara before returning home to San Francisco. Here, he had dinner with some friends, one of which was a film critic, Pauline Kael. Pauline noticed alarming changes in Kees's behavior, and throughout the middle of July, he spent time drinking with his friend, novelist Michael Grieg. He told Grieg that he was considering relocating to Mexico, as he had always been fascinated by the country, thanks to books like Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry. On the 17th of July, Kees returned to his home, and the following day, he received a call from Grieg, who told him that a possible job offer may be coming his way. He also spoke via telephone to memoirist Janet Richards, asking if she would like to visit with him. On the 19th of July, his car was found abandoned on the Marin County side of the Golden Gate Bridge, with the keys still in the ignition. Most people are certain that he ended his own life, but when his mother was told that he jumped, she protested by saying but he was never the athletic type. No trace of Kees has ever been found, and in 1987, an article published in the San Francisco Examiner stated, quote, "What could be more poetic than to vanish into the fog of San Francisco, never to be seen again?" In 1986, Art Scholl worked out of Riverside, Southern California as an aerobatic pilot, flight instructor, aerial cameraman, and educator. His wife, Judy, was a big part of his professional career, as she helped run his business and manage his performances. Some of his better-known appearances are from TV series such as The A-Team and Chips, and movies like Iron Eagle and Indiana Jones. In 1986, he'd been asked to start working on the now famous Tom Cruise movie Top Gun. His job would be to film a few background shots, which are used as a backdrop to actors when they're placed in front of a green screen. He was asked to do an inverted flat spin that would be filmed from the pilot's perspective. And thanks to his years of experience, Art believed the job would be a quick and easy one to complete. On the 16th of September, 1985, Art took off to capture a few sequences of the spin with an observer aircraft flying behind him. In the first shot, the observer plane was caught on camera, and he requested that it back off a few miles so that he could complete his task without spoiling the sequence. But while doing so, the craft lost sight of Art's plane, and moments later, he radioed in that he was about to attempt another inverted spin. He was flying approximately 5 miles off the Californian coast, and partway through the spin, he radioed in saying, "I have a problem. I have a real problem." The observer plane flew to his last known location, but found that he had disappeared, and neither Art nor any part of his plane was ever found, as the Coast Guard deemed the area too deep for there to be any point in searching. After the incident, it was presumed that Art had succumbed due to a crash, and it was decided that Top Gun would be dedicated to his memory. Joe Pitchler found fame when he appeared in the third and fourth installments of the movie Beethoven, which follows the adventures of a misbehaving St. Bernard. In 2003, his family insisted that he return home to Bremerton, Washington, where he graduated from high school in 2005. His family has stated that he was waiting for his braces to be removed from his teeth the following year, after which he was planning to return to Los Angeles. But for the time being, he was living by himself across town from his family home. On the 5th of January 2006, Joe went to a friend's house where he and a few more friends spent time playing cards and drinking. Everyone who was there that night stated that afterward, Joe seemed to be in good spirits and that his behavior seemed normal. Another friend, however, told a different tale and stated that after everyone had left and the evening was drawing to a close, his mood changed. At the end of the night, he drove his remaining friends home, and at 4:08 a.m., he placed a call to one of the other friends who had also been in attendance that night. He later told police that Joe was very upset and inconsolable. Joe said that he didn't know why he was crying or why he was feeling the way he was, and that he couldn't stop drinking. He then told the friend that he would call back in an hour, but never did. On the 9th of January, his silver 2005 Toyota Corolla was found at the intersection of Wheaton Way and Sheridan Road. His cell phone was found inside the vehicle along with many of his other possessions, though his wallet and car keys were nowhere to be found. His family reported him as a missing person 1 week later on the 16th of January, after their attempts to contact him had been unsuccessful. When his apartment was checked, it was found unlocked with the lights on, something that his family describes as very out of character for Joe to do. Police initially believed that he had taken his own life by jumping off the Port Madison Narrows, but search dogs that were brought to the area couldn't pick up his scent, and despite numerous searches being conducted, no trace of him was ever found. Joe's family are convinced that foul play is involved in his mysterious disappearance, despite the discovery of a note that he had written in which he states that he wishes he'd been a stronger brother for his younger brother, and that all of his belongings were to be given to him. Ilenia Carisi was the eldest daughter of Albano Carisi. She had made her first appearance in a film called Champagne in Paradise, alongside her parents, and later became a letter turner on the Italian version of the popular game show Wheel of Fortune. She had been studying literature at King's College London, as she had aspirations of becoming a novelist, and scored the highest marks in her year. During her time at college, she started thinking of traveling the world on her own, with just a backpack and her journal. At some point, she decided to take time off from studying and went back to Italy. Here, she sold off everything that she owned in order to finance her planned solo trip, which started in South America in 1993. After spending a few months in Belize, she traveled by bus to New Orleans on Boxing Day. Her brother had decided to surprise her in Belize with a visit, but after arriving on the 27th of December and searching for her by knocking on doors, he was told that she had boarded a bus to Mexico the previous day. The last time that Ilenia was seen was in the French Quarter of New Orleans around the 6th of January. At the time, she was staying at the Le Dale Hotel with a street musician named Alexander Masekela, who was 20 years older than she was. On the 31st of January, Masekela was arrested on unrelated charges, but he was soon released when no evidence was found tying him to Ilenia's disappearance. A security guard later told police that he witnessed a woman vaguely matching Ilenia's description jumping into the Mississippi River after saying, "I belong in the water." This prompted a search by the Coast Guard, but it yielded no results. In 1996, an unidentified caller told police that Ilenia was still alive but didn't know where she was. The last time her parents had any contact with her was on the 31st of December, 1993, and they reported her as a missing person on the 18th of January. In June of 2011, reports were received that Ilenia was living in a monastery in the United States, but her father dismissed these claims, calling them shameful speculation containing not a bit of truth. She remains missing to this day. Sweet Jimmy Robinson was a middleweight boxer with a not too memorable career, amassing only 8 professional wins coupled with 25 losses. Out of those 25 losses, he was knocked out 16 times, but he is remembered for one bout that he fought on the 7th of February in 1951 against Muhammad Ali, then still known as Cassius Clay. Ali was supposed to fight Willie Gullett that night, but Gullett was a no-show after learning that Ali was being paid $500 more than he was, and so Jimmy was asked to be a last-minute stand-in in only his second ever professional bout. Jimmy never made it through the first round as he was floored by Ali after just 1 minute and 34 seconds. He would, however, continue to box for the next 7 years, retiring once in 1963, but featuring in a comeback fight against Kent Green in Miami in 1968. He also lost the fight in less than a minute. Robinson was interviewed for the final time in 1979 by Sports Illustrated writer Michael Brennan after he tracked him down in Miami. In that interview, he revealed that he only weighed 158 pounds for the Ali fight, and not 178 as was officially listed. He also stated that he and Ali used to be good friends, and that the two would often drive around in Ali's pink Cadillac, but that they hadn't seen each other since 1967. That was the last time that anyone heard from or saw Jimmy. In 2009, ESPN sports writer Wright Thompson revealed in a piece that he wrote that he'd been looking for Jimmy for 6 years, but to no avail. An avid Muhammad Ali collector named Steven Singer also spent a number of years looking for him, as Jimmy's was the only signature missing from his collection of over 50 fighters who faced Ali. People in Miami remember Jimmy and even remember seeing him in the last few years, but no trace of the man seems to have remained, and his whereabouts are still unknown. Missing celebrity Elizabeth Eaton Converse, better known as a singer-songwriter and musician, Connie Converse. didn't become well known until 2004 when her music was featured on a radio show. A compilation album of her songs called How Sad, How Lovely was released in 2009, expanding her fan base even further. During the 1950s, she lived in Greenwich Village, Hell's Kitchen, and Harlem, and started calling herself Connie after being given the nickname in New York. It's then that she started writing songs and composing accompanying music on her guitar, often performing her work for friends. During this time, she started drinking and smoking, despite her religious upbringing, and her parents were dead set against her ambitions as a musician, her father never hearing her sing until he passed away. She made one brief appearance on The Morning Show on CBS, which was hosted by Walter Cronkite. She was struggling to find success in the music industry, and by 1961, she'd moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she became a secretary and eventually worked as a managing editor for the Journal of Conflict Resolution, but didn't produce any new music. By 1973, she was suffering from depression, and the journal where she was employed had moved to Yale, leaving her without an income. Her ex-colleagues and friends collected money to send her on a trip to England for 6 months, hoping that this would help her feel better, but to no effect. Shortly after, her mother asked her to accompany her on a trip to Alaska, and she agreed to go, though she wasn't happy to go along. It's believed that this trip had a hand in her decision to vanish. Not too long after that, she was informed by doctors that she needed to have a hysterectomy done, and the news caused her to become even more depressed. In 1974, shortly before her 50th birthday, she wrote a series of letters to her family and friends in which she explained that she needed to make a fresh start. She packed all of her things into her Volkswagen Beetle and left Michigan for good, never to be seen or heard from again. The unsolved mystery of the disappearance of Barbara Newell Follett started on the 7th of December 1939 in Brookline, Massachusetts. Barbara was considered to be a child prodigy in the 1920s when she published 2 books with Alfred A. Knopf. The first was called The House Without Windows and was written when she was just 8 years old. Her second, called The Voyage of the Normandie, followed when she was 14. During her teens, she pursued a career as a crewman on a ship, sailing out into the Atlantic, and upon her return, she had completed the second book. Both of her novels received critical acclaim, but after her father, who had always encouraged her to become a writer, left the family for a younger woman, her work started to dwindle. When she was 16, she moved with her mother to an apartment in New York. But since it was the Great Depression and they didn't receive any money from her father, times were hard. She then met an outdoorsman named Nickerson Rogers, and the couple fell in love, eventually marrying in Massachusetts in 1934. But after 5 years of marriage, the couple started having problems in their relationship when she started to suspect that he was cheating on her, and on December 7th, they had a fight and she decided to leave. Barbara left their apartment on foot with $30 to her name and simply disappeared. Nickerson didn't report her missing for 2 weeks. When he eventually did so, he filed the missing persons report under her married name, Robertson, and the media didn't realize that this was, in fact, the former child prodigy who was being sought. When she remained missing for a number of years, her father, with whom she still had no real relationship, wrote a letter pleading for her to return, and it was published in The Atlantic. It would take a further 25 years before the media realized that Barbara was missing, and by that time, she could have moved to anywhere in the world or even passed away. Many theories have been put forward as to what happened to Barbara. Some believe that a tragic accident may have happened during a flight with Nickerson, explaining why he took so long to file a missing persons report. Others think that she may have followed the plot in her first novel, in which a girl runs away from home to live by herself in the wild. But that's all mere speculation, and we will never know what really happened to the promising young novelist who vanished when she was just 25 years old. On the 30th of November 2000, Scott Smith, bassist for the Canadian rock band Loverboy, joined the ranks of missing celebrities who have never been found. Smith was studying at the University of Manitoba in 1979 when he was given the opportunity to play bass for the band. Before long, they became a success, and in less than 2 years, they found fame after the release of their self-titled album. Their second album, called Get Lucky, enjoyed just as much success when the song Working for the Weekend was released as the album's lead single, reaching number 2 on the Billboard mainstream rock chart. The band continued to tour throughout the 80s, but didn't find as much success due to changing music tastes, and they didn't record much music during this time. They would start recording again in the 90s, and would promote their new music through touring. But in 2000, everything changed in one fateful moment. After performing at a benefit concert for juvenile diabetes research in Vancouver, Smith, his fiancée, and 2 friends decided to use a 37-foot sailboat to sail from British Columbia to Mexico. As they reached choppy waters about 4 miles from San Francisco's Ocean Beach, something went very wrong. Smith's longtime friend, Bill Ellis, recalls that he went down below to change into foul weather gear so that he could relieve Smith at the wheel. But while he was changing, a massive wave hit the vessel and it capsized. He ran upstairs only a few seconds later to find that Smith had been washed overboard and was nowhere to be seen. They turned the boat around and tried to locate him through the rough surf, but neither he nor any debris could be located. They immediately contacted the Coast Guard, who deployed helicopters within 20 minutes of receiving the report. 2 vessels were also sent out, and a 133 square mile search was conducted. But when rough seas and fog intervened, the search was called off at 2 p.m. the next day. His friends and family continued to search for him with the help of West Star Marine Service, but he was never found, and he remains missing to this day. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry won not only the United States National Book Award, but several of the highest literary awards available in France before he became a missing person on the 31st of July, 1944. He was known as a poet, aristocrat, journalist, and pioneering aviator, but is mostly remembered for his novella titled The Little Prince. Before the outbreak of World War II, he was a successful commercial pilot, and at the start of the war, he joined the French Air Force. Here, he would be involved in several reconnaissance missions until France's armistice with Germany in 1940. Thereafter, he was demobilized from the Air Force, and he traveled to the United States to aid in persuading the US government to enter the war against the Nazis. He would spend a further 2 years and 4 months in the US, during which time he wrote 3 more novels. He then joined the Free French Air Force in North Africa, though by this time his health was failing and he was 8 years over his cutoff age. In 1943, he received an assignment to fly an unarmed P-38 Lockheed Lightning with his former unit, though the plane was far more sophisticated than the ones he was used to flying. On his second mission, his plane experienced engine failure and he crashed, resulting in him being grounded for 8 months. During this time, he was accused by French General Charles de Gaulle of being a Nazi sympathizer, which caused his health and depression to worsen. He started drinking heavily, causing his mental health and physical health to suffer further, but he was eventually cleared to return to service. On the 31st of July, 1944, he was sent on what was to be one of his last missions, and he departed from Corsica. But he would never return, and to this day, no one is certain what really happened to him during the flight. Some people believe that he must have been shot down, while others think that he may have lost control of his aircraft, since he was known to be an undisciplined pilot who often read books while he was flying, and had a little interest in aircraft complexities. But whatever the case may be, his true fate remains a mystery. Decades after the fall of the Soviet Union, there are still many mysteries left over from this highly secretive era. One of the largest of these mysteries is the Mount Yamato complex. Construction began in the 1970s in the Ural Mountains. The specific mountain chosen for this construction project was Yamato. It was likely picked due to the fact that it's the largest mountain in the southern Urals, but the fact that it translates to evil or wicked mountain has only helped to add to rumors about this strange complex. Secret cities were built to house the workers who were constructing the complex. In 1979, these cities were combined into Mezgoria, the most famous of Russia's so-called closed cities. These cities were so secretive that they wouldn't appear on maps, and those living there were forbidden from talking about their work. The only thing that could be determined from the outside was that there was a large rail network built up, and rock was being taken from under the mountain for some unknown reason. Work on the Yamato complex continued during economic problems in the USSR. Even when the military spending was cut in other areas, the excavation and building under this mountain remained a priority for the Soviet and later Russian leadership. Despite Russian efforts to keep the complex a secret, US spy satellites were able to take photographs of the construction. US intelligence estimated that it was roughly the size of Washington, D.C. Other Russians were also curious about this mysterious operation. According to an article in the New York Times, a Russian journalist named N. Starkov went searching for answers and came across a massive hole in the ground near the complex. Looking in, he saw a military barracks, a helicopter landing pad, and what he called so much iron junk. He later joked that a junkyard crowned the mountain. Of course, the United States didn't believe this was some kind of junkyard, and was especially concerned as agreements had been put into place to limit Russia's military modernization. The US was actually giving Russia money to help with its missile dismantling, so the fact that the country apparently had money to spend in this area drew the attention of politicians. When the US asked about the Yamato complex, they got a mix of different responses. Some officials would simply say that they couldn't say anything about it. Other times, the spending was attributed to the building of roads, bridges, and other similar projects in the area. At one point, it was claimed this was all a mining project. The Ural Mountains are known to have an abundance of natural resources, and it made sense that Russia would want to access that. It even lines up with construction increasing during periods of economic instability, as this could have been seen as an answer to their problems. An explanation for the secrecy could be that they simply didn't want the US to know what material resources they had at their disposal. But this story was later changed to claim that the complex was simply a storage facility for clothes and food. A few theories have been put forward about what the complex could actually be. After the discovery of the complex, locals were concerned that it was actually a storage facility, but not for anything so mundane. It could be a place where nuclear waste is stored. The location is near one of Russia's last remaining nuclear labs, and this would make it a convenient location for waste from that lab. Alternatively, it could be part of that same lab, and more nuclear experiments have been taking place here, deep under the mountain. The US intelligence agencies believe the site is some kind of nuclear bunker. It's so deep underground that the radio system needs to be on the outside of the complex, so it's unlikely to be some kind of control center. Given its size, it's possible that a large number of Russian elites could hide out here in the event of a nuclear war. Today, the real purpose of the Yamato complex remains a mystery, and it's unlikely that will change unless the Russian government sees fit to finally reveal the truth. The story of Indrid Cold is a bizarre tale that remains unexplained more than 50 years after the creature, or being, was spotted in West Virginia. It began with a man named Woodrow Derenberger. He was an ordinary individual in his early 50s in 1966 and worked as a sewing machine salesman. It was a job that meant he was on the road a lot, as was the case on the night of November 2nd. Woodrow was driving along Interstate 77 and was near Parkersburg, West Virginia, when he saw another vehicle following in his rearview mirror. The car passed by him and continued ahead, but following close behind this was a vehicle that Woodrow had never seen before. He described it as looking like a kerosene lamp in shape. It was the color of charcoal, but reflective. This unidentified vehicle turned so it was across the road and gradually came to a stop in front of Woodrow's car. Stepping out from this vehicle was what looked at first glance like an ordinary man. He was roughly 6 feet tall, wearing an overcoat and pants that were shiny. He came to the side of Woodrow's car, and Woodrow was able to get a better look at his features. In an interview he later gave to the local news, Woodrow described the being as looking perfectly natural and a normal human being. He apparently looked as if he had a deep suntan and had dark brown hair that was combed straight back. Woodrow didn't notice anything abnormal about any of his facial features except his mouth, which formed a large smile. This earned the being the first nickname, the Grinning Man. The Grinning Man spoke to Woodrow telepathically. He asked for his name, told Woodrow not to be afraid, and that he wasn't there to hurt him. He also referred to himself as "we," though Woodrow only saw one person on this occasion. The creature gave his name as Indrid Cold and engaged in small talk with Woodrow before getting in his vehicle and leaving. Woodrow went to the authorities and the media about his encounter. He couldn't explain what he had seen, and neither could anybody else. Others would come forward to say that they'd also seen Indrid Cold, or that they'd seen lights in the sky and mysterious flying objects around the time that the being was seen. Many people were skeptical, and the story apparently did Woodrow more harm than good. He lost his job and his wife due to the story. His home was constantly bombarded by people searching for Indrid, especially after Woodrow claimed that the mysterious being had visited him more than once over the course of the month following his first sighting. Later in his life, Woodrow stopped talking about Indrid Cold and apparently wanted to put the whole experience behind him, but he never recanted his story. According to writer John Keel, this wasn't actually the first time Indrid Cold had been seen. He discovered that 2 boys in New Jersey had witnessed the strange grinning man in a green metallic suit months before the incident in West Virginia. On this occasion, he didn't speak to the boys, and it's not possible to verify whether this actually happened. In more recent years, an urban legend surrounding a dancing, grinning man has been spread online. This started with an encounter on Reddit's Let's Not Meet subreddit, and since then, many others have claimed to have seen the strange, grinning individual. Tellings of that story often use a drawing that was originally attached to the Indrid Cold legend. It's possible these might be more modern encounters with the Indrid Cold entity. In an isolated region of Russia's central Siberia, there's a mysterious phenomenon that scientists have been unable to explain or even track down. Some people believe the answer is paranormal in nature, while others suspect the extraterrestrial. In the upper Vilyuy River region, there's an area known to the local population as the Valley of Death. The location earned its ominous name for good reason. According to local folklore, hunters would sometimes come across mysterious giant domes that resembled upturned cauldrons. They could be up to 9 meters in diameter and looked more like hills than man-made objects, as they were half buried in the ground. Foliage grew around them, and it's said that the trees grew differently on the cauldrons than in the surrounding area. The cauldrons themselves were copper in color and made from a strange metal that was hard to break off. Many had an opening, and the edges around this were razor sharp. Wherever anybody went to investigate them, they would come down with head-splitting headaches and vertigo. It was enough for the elders to claim that the location was cursed and ban people from going there. That didn't stop people from visiting them, and there were many stories about people who either accidentally or purposefully ended up in the cauldrons. In one story, a person claimed to have looked through one of the holes and saw that it led down to a larger underground chamber with several doors leading off of it. Another story, set in the 1930s, comes from a woman who claimed that she'd been sheltered in a cauldron when she and her father were caught in below freezing conditions. Inside was much warmer than outside, and they were able to comfortably spend the night there. Another person to spend the night in the cauldron was a man named Mikhail Koretsky. He was from the local area and had grown up with stories warning him to stay away from the dangerous objects. He saw cauldrons on 3 occasions, and on the last, he and his friends decided to camp out there for the night. At first, there didn't seem to be anything wrong, and the friends went home thinking this was all just a story designed to scare children. But within a month of the event, one of Mikhail's friends fell ill and lost all of his hair. Mikhail developed 3 small boils on his cheek, which had been on the ground as he slept. These wouldn't go away even decades later. When explorers from Western Russia learned of these cauldrons, there was little interest in them. Even when expeditions to find the cauldrons did set out as recently as 1979, explorers couldn't find anything. Guides who claimed to have previously seen the cauldrons said that the landscape had changed too much, but they did find perfectly circular holes in the permafrost. Some stories of the cauldrons implied that they'd been sinking into the ground, and it seemed like that process had been completed. No photographs of these cauldrons exist, and some have debated whether or not they actually existed in the first place. This could all be nothing more than local folklore. Another simple explanation could be that there was once an ancient civilization here that built houses out of a copper-colored material, and the more unusual aspects of the story were added later on by people who came across the remains of this civilization. Others believe that these were either ancient alien ships that crashed in Siberia, or possibly a station set up by aliens to protect the Earth from threats from space. The symptoms that people have reported when exploring the cauldrons resemble radiation sickness, which could indicate that there was a nuclear fuel source on board. Until these copper cauldrons are located and studied by modern scientists, it's hard to get a clear answer on what these could be, if they exist at all, and the mystery remains unsolved. For over 40 years, a strange formation at Saturn's North Pole has been amazing to astronomy fans and puzzling scientists. Despite a space probe being sent to the planet in 2006, we still don't know the cause of Saturn's hexagon. Saturn has been known to humans since ancient times. The planet's most dazzling feature, its rings, were first discovered in 1610. And since then, we've slowly gathered more information about the second largest planet in our solar system. In the 1980s, the Voyager probe passed the planet collecting data and photographs of the ringed gas giant. Scientists never expected what they would find at the top of the planet. It was a storm system so large that it couldn't be captured in a single photograph. Putting together information from various photos, scientists figured out that it was hexagonal in shape, with each side roughly 2,000 kilometers long. That's longer than the Earth's diameter. In general, things found in nature tend to be relatively circular. We see that in storms here on Earth and on other planets. Jupiter's red spot is the best example, but that wasn't the case on Saturn. With the Cassini probe passing Saturn in 2006, we've been able to figure out a little more about Saturn's hexagon, but there are still a lot of mysteries we don't know. It doesn't shift longitude like other clouds seen on Earth, and it has a rotational period of about 10.5 hours. Interestingly, Saturn releases radio emissions from its interior at the same rate. Scientists believe it's an eastward-moving jet stream, but one that's highly persistent. Even though we've only discovered it in the 1980s, it could have been going on for much longer than 40 years. Cassini discovered that the color of the hexagon changes with Saturn's seasons. In the summer, it becomes more yellow in color, due to sunlight breaking apart methane in the planet's atmosphere. In the winter, it turned a cooler blue shade as this process stopped. But the speed and shape of the hexagon stayed the same, suggesting that it's being caused by something in the planet's interior. One theory behind the cause of the hexagon involves high-pressure gas undergoing convection. Saturn's atmosphere is warmed internally. These heated gases rise to the surface where they cool and sink back down. But scientists have theorized that these heated gases might be under immense pressure due to the atmosphere above them. When the heat leads to gases rising, it can create vortexes that pinch certain parts of the storm, creating the hexagon shape that we see. Scientists have been able to recreate something similar on a smaller scale in laboratories, but it didn't match exactly what was being seen at Saturn's pole. Another question surrounding the hexagon is why it only appears at the North Pole. We've no reason to believe at the moment that the pressure and gases at the South Pole would be any different than those at the North, but the same process isn't happening here. It could be that what's happening on the North Pole is only temporary, and we were fortunate to see it before Saturn returns back to normal. Or it could mean there's a significant difference between these two hemispheres that we don't know about yet. When it comes to exploring Saturn's systems, its moons are getting much more attention than the planet itself today. But another mission to the gas giant could help to answer some of these questions, or create more mysteries that need to be solved. The Indus Valley was one of the cradles of civilization. Humans have been living in the area since at least 7000 BC, with the main Indus Valley civilization existing between 5500 and 1900 BC. The culture there was incredibly important. Even though the Indus Valley civilization disappeared, later cultures in the region were influenced by this early civilization, which was called the Harappan civilization. Unfortunately, we still have many unanswered questions about the Harappan periods, including their language. The Harappan language is an unknown, possibly only theoretical language that would have been spoken in the Indus Valley from around 1300 BC onwards. Figuring out this language and how it relates to others in the area might help uncover a wealth of knowledge about the Indus Valley. Language is an important part of civilization building. Not only does it help to communicate, it can also create unity. In ancient times, people could identify with one another due to the language they spoke. A common language could indicate a common culture and practices, while a foreign language indicates an outsider. But languages evolve and change over time. Words from other languages are incorporated into the population's speech, and gradually what was one language morphs into something else entirely. By studying how these languages change, we can see who the different groups were interacting with, where they were migrating from, and where they migrated to. All this would be very useful information for learning more about the early people of the Indus Valley. Unfortunately, learning more about this language would prove difficult. The first major challenge for scholars is the script they use. The Harappan language is believed to have been written using the famous Indus Valley script. This script has famously not been translated. We have many inscriptions, including official seals, but all are relatively short. So far, we've found no bilingual inscription, such as the Rosetta Stone, which helped to translate the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs into Greek. But even if we did decipher this script, it's not clear yet whether or not this was actually used to write the Harappan language. There are some clues to suggest that it did, though. For example, seals using the Indus Valley script found outside the Harappan area appear to use the symbols in a different order than those found inside the area. That suggests that the script was being used to write the local languages, indicating that the Indus Valley script was being used to write in a Harappan language in seals found in the Harappan civilization. That also seems to indicate that only one language, or a group of very similar languages, were being spoken here, but scholars aren't certain about this either. One thing that scholars want to figure out is how this language relates to others spoken today. The main theory is that it was related to the Dravidian languages, which are still used in South India today. This theory is based on our knowledge of the migration in the area. Harappan might even be a Proto-Dravidian language that all the modern languages evolved from. Today, the language family used in the Indus Valley area is Indo-European, and it's possible that Harappan would fall into this category. But scholars believe this language family was introduced to the area after the end of the Harappan civilization. Other theories include a connection to the Austroasiatic languages, which are mainly spoken in Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia, but appear in pockets around Southeast Asia. Another theory is that it could be connected to the Nihali language. This is a language isolate, meaning it has no known relatives and is only spoken in a small part of West Central India, not far from where the Harappan civilization existed. It might also not have any modern relatives and has been completely lost to time. The Monaco Grand Prix is the most glamorous race on the Formula One calendar, and for decades it's been a favorite of the marketing departments of various race teams and multinational companies. But in 2004, a PR exercise took a strange turn that has left behind a mystery still unsolved today. The Jaguar Formula One team were excited to partner with the new Hollywood film Ocean's 12 for the event. It would guarantee a lot of media coverage from the press outside the industry, especially when the stars of the film came to visit. The plot of Ocean's 12 revolves around a diamond heist, and the marketing departments at the film and Jaguar came up with an idea to weave their promotional activities. The team also partnered with the diamond dealer Steinmetz to create something unique. Jaguar had partnered with a diamond company the year before with a special auction dinner in the week before the race, but this time they would bring the promotion into the race itself. Diamonds, roughly the size of a shirt button, were embedded in front of each race car. These were worth many hundreds of thousands of dollars and came with their own security person who stayed in the Jaguar garage whenever the cars were there. The diamonds were sealed into the car with a vise, and it would be impossible for someone to remove them without tools. According to the team's PR, he considered removing the diamonds before the start of the race to keep them safe, but this didn't happen. Instead, the two Jaguar cars lined up on the grid with the small diamonds on their noses. Not only is Monaco the most glamorous race on the calendar, but it's also one of the most difficult. The race takes place on the streets of Monte Carlo, which means it has lots of tight corners, and any mistake can have dramatic consequences. Unfortunately, the challenge was too much for Jaguar driver Christian Klein. In the opening lap of the race, he crashed twice. He first made contact with the back of another car at a corner called Mirabeau, then lost control of the steering and crashed at a hairpin corner named Lowe's. As is typical for this kind of incident, the car was lifted off the track and stored behind the barriers until the end of the race. The Jaguar team, or the Diamonds Guard, weren't allowed to go and collect the car until hours later. When they arrived, they found one expensive item missing. The diamond was nowhere to be seen. A search of the track turned up nothing, and an investigation began. It was theorized that a member of the track staff, or photographer, took the diamond after the car was removed from the track. These would have been the only people allowed in the area where the car was kept. But the closest photographer to the hairpin, where Klein crashed, claimed the diamond was missing before the second incident. He believes that it became dislodged after the first crash, and could have flown off the car anywhere between the two corners. A lucky fan walking on the track after the race might have come across the diamond and taken it home. Alternatively, it might have become embedded into a wall somewhere around the circuit and has gone unnoticed ever since. The strange disappearance of 20-year-old Amir Isaiah Ellis is one that has many worrying details, as investigators believe he's met with foul play, and his family has echoed that sentiment, though they remain hopeful that he will be found alive. At the time of his disappearance, Amir was living in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he was getting ready for the birth of his first child. But on the 17th of May, 2023, he disappeared without a trace and has not been seen since. The last time that anyone saw Amir was at around 1:30 a.m. that morning when he got a ride with one of his friends, a man named Laren, who's reportedly his roommate. Laren dropped him off at one of his female friends, a woman named Takahi's house, which is situated at 101 Rocky Reef Circle. But a short while after dropping him off, his friend got a worrying phone call from Takahi, in which she stated that two men had entered her house uninvited and grabbed Amir against his will, but it isn't known where they took him. The man immediately asked Takahi why she phoned him instead of placing a 911 call, and she replied that the man who broke into her house told her not to contact the police, and she thought it would be better to contact him instead. When Amir hadn't returned home by that evening at around 7:30, his family started to worry that he was in some kind of trouble, and they filed a missing person report with the Hot Springs Police Department. When investigators interviewed Takahi at her house, she stated that two Hispanic men barged into the house before taking Amir away. Since his disappearance, his family has scoured the surrounding areas in an effort to find him or any clues that would lead to his whereabouts, but their efforts have been in vain so far. But there has been some progress in the case, as 3 people have been taken into custody. It's believed that they're responsible for Amir's disappearance, but a gag order has been issued, and so not many further details are available. Amir's mother, Jessica, stated that when she found out that Amir had been kidnapped, she didn't think it was true, but when she received a call from her younger son, asking if she knew what had happened to Amir, she realized something was terribly wrong. She has since stated that she doesn't believe Laren's version of the time when he dropped Amir off at Takahi's house, since she looked at CCTV security footage from a neighbor's house located on Rocky Reef Circle and saw his car driving past at around 1:40 a.m. as he was on his way to drop Amir off. Jessica then traveled to Takahi's house to look for more answers, but she struggled to get any information since Takahi has since stated that she has no idea how the two men got into her house, and she believes that she may have left the front door unlocked but couldn't say for sure. She added that she was in the bathroom when the two men pounced on Amir and dragged him from the house, leaving his shoes and cell phone behind in her home. Strangely, Laren asked Takahi whether the two men had forced Amir into a vehicle. She stated that they were on foot and didn't have a car with them, which would make it very hard to carry out an abduction. But soon after, she suddenly changed her story, and instead stated that the men were driving either a red, black, maroon, or burgundy car. Laren would then reveal that he'd heard about an incident in which Amir robbed a Mexican man who may have been one of his abductors. He also added that he'd gotten wind that there was a photo of Amir and Takahi that's being shared on social media sites, but that he hadn't actually seen the photo with his own eyes. The three individuals who have been taken into custody in connection with Amir's abduction are 18-year-old Nathaniel A. Speed, 18-year-old Alexia T. Chambers, and a third person who's not yet been named. If you have any information on what happened that night, or if you know where Amir is, you're urged to contact the Hot Springs Police Department at 501-321-6704. Amir is described as an African-American male who has black hair and brown eyes. He stands between 5 foot 5 inches tall and 5 foot 7 inches tall, and at the time of his disappearance weighed around 155 pounds. He can also be recognized by several tattoos on his arms, though a description of these has not been given. It's always worrying when a missing person is known to have made plans for the near future, since this usually indicates that they didn't disappear of their own accord. And in many of these cases, foul play is suspected. This seems to be the case in the mysterious disappearance of 37-year-old Kathleen Patricia Haley, who's been missing from Newport News in Virginia since the 1st of September, 2012. Kathleen's family has since told investigators that she was in the habit of keeping in contact with them on a weekly basis, and that she wouldn't decide to leave without letting someone know where she was headed. Before she went missing, Kathleen worked as a dancer at a nightclub called Headlights, and she was living by herself in an apartment on the 2800 block of West Avenue, since her boyfriend had just moved to Germany a month earlier. Kathleen's sister told investigators that on the day of her disappearance, she spoke to Kathleen and they decided to have dinner together later that evening. Kathleen also told her about plans that she had, which she would attend to after they had dinner. But Kathleen didn't show up at her sister's house as planned, and when her family got no word from her for the next 6 days, they reported her missing to the Newport News Police Department, noting that her dog was missing too. Investigators immediately went to Kathleen's apartment, and upon their arrival, they were immediately suspicious since it looked as though something untoward had happened, and they suspected that foul play was involved. They noted what they believed to be biological material throughout the apartment, including the walls, the kitchen, and Kathleen's bedroom, specifically on the wall. They also found traces of biological material on items of clothing that had been left in her laundry basket, and these were collected as evidence. Just as worrying was the fact that some items were missing, but this didn't look like a robbery since the missing items seemed to indicate that someone went through a lot of effort to dispose of possible evidence. Kathleen's computer and bed were missing, but the mattress and box spring were later found close to a dumpster outside the apartment. It was also noted that someone had removed a piece of carpeting in Kathleen's bedroom, and multiple pairs of rubber gloves were found, along with several cleaning products that had been left in the bathroom, suggesting that someone went through a lot of effort to clean the crime scene. When her car was located, still inside the complex where she lived, investigators noted that it was unlocked and the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, which they found suspicious since Kathleen stands at just 4 foot 11 inches tall, and she would not have been able to operate the car with the seat in that position, suggesting it had been driven by someone much bigger than her. Shortly after her disappearance, investigators released a sketch of a man who witnesses saw walking in and out of Kathleen's apartment on the 4th of September. They also added that he walked over to the dumpster with what looked like rolled up bedding in his arms. Kathleen's co-workers at the club were questioned, but they stated they hadn't seen her and were unable to provide any further helpful information about where she may be or who she could be with. With no further leads to follow, Kathleen's bank account and cell phone records were checked and monitored, but they've seen no activity since she disappeared, which is also the case with her credit cards. Kathleen's family has stated that she would never have given her car keys or apartment keys to someone she didn't know, and that it was highly unusual for her to leave her car unlocked, even though it was parked inside an apartment complex. Kathleen is described as having brown hair and hazel eyes. She stands at around 4 foot 11 inches tall and weighs between 100 and 120 pounds. She's known to wear a gemstone necklace around her neck and small studded earrings in her ears. Kathleen's family is desperate for answers and has asked anyone with a lead to come forward. If you have information on Kathleen's case, you're asked to contact the Newport News Police Department at 757-928-4100. Alternatively, you can contact the Crime Line at 888-562-5887. When a missing person is reported to be suffering from issues with their mental state at the time that they disappeared, the case becomes a lot more complicated, since their behavior and movements can be difficult to predict. It's believed that 19-year-old Aidan Clune was suffering from a primary psychosis when he disappeared in Wells, Nevada on the 26th of April, 2022, and he's still not been located to this day. Aidan, who hails from Sonoma County in California, had been suffering from depression in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, and his family stated that he'd been seeking help by consulting a therapist. But his mental state had suffered a setback during the COVID pandemic, which was further exacerbated by the fact that he'd been through a breakup. What's known about Aidan's movements before he vanished is that he left his house on the 26th of April, 2022, after which he drove to Utah, then Nevada, and finally Wells, where he checked into a hotel. His mother told investigators that she spoke to him over the phone the next morning, and he told her that he'd been having trouble sleeping. She then asked him to come home, but he refused, and when she asked where he was, he also declined to answer. He left the hotel at 6:23 that morning, after which he vanished into thin air. After he was reported as missing, his red 2007 Nissan Frontier pickup truck was found on the 28th of April on US 93, about 50 miles from the hotel that he was staying in. Inside, investigators found a sharpened blade, his laptop, clothes, and other belongings, including his wallet, where they'd been left on the passenger seat. Worryingly, the car had damage to the rear bumper, and one of the side mirrors had been temporarily fixed with duct tape. It was also noted that the car's passenger seat was left open. It was noted that footprints believed to belong to Aidan led southwest away from the car, and these were followed by an aerial search team for about 10 miles before the trail was lost in the snow. It was noted that he had removed his shoes while he was heading into the desert, and that he had started running at some point. Search dogs, volunteers, helicopter crews, and searchers on ATVs combed the Cherry Creek mountain range, hoping to find even a small trace of Aidan, but this was done in vain as nothing was found despite hundreds of miles being covered. It isn't known why Aidan would decide to walk into the desert by himself, since he wasn't in any kind of trouble, and it's assumed that this is likely due to his mental state at the time. But it's known that he took his phone with him, and that at one point, he searched Google for spark plug replacements. His phone last pinged off a tower southwest of the area where his truck was located. Aidan's mother, Amy, has since traveled to the area where he went missing, and she noticed that a highway ran close to the area where his footsteps ended, and she believes he may have traveled in that direction rather than deeper into the mountains, which would explain why no trace of him has ever been found there. Investigators did receive one tip from a woman in Salt Lake City, who reported that she'd seen a man fitting Aidan's description walking along the downtown area, and she'd also seen him on a train. She stated that he seems to be homeless and that he's always seen walking around. She managed to take a photo of the man, but unfortunately it was rather blurry. When the photo was shown to Amy, though, she stated there was a good chance that it was him, since the man in the photo has the same hairstyle and jawline. Aidan's family then visited several homeless shelters in the area where they showed his photo around, and several people stated that they'd seen him in the area. The blurry photo has since been sent to a video forensic company in hopes that it can be confirmed whether it's him or not. Aidan is described as having brown hair and brown eyes. He weighs around 125 pounds and stands 5 foot 9 inches tall. He has an Oakland A's tattoo on his ankle and another of a smiley face on his abdomen. The last time he was seen, Aidan was wearing dark-colored pants with a black North Face jacket and black high-top shoes. A $5,000 reward is being offered to anyone who comes forward with information leading to Aidan's whereabouts, and if you have any such information, you can contact the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office at 707-565-2569. You can also get in contact with the Elko County Sheriff's Office at 775-770-7300. Aiden's NamUs case number is MP92178. 34-year-old Timothy Brady, known by his friends and family as TJ, went missing from Brooksville, Florida on the 10th of December 2022, and he's not been seen or heard from since. Before he went missing, TJ was working as a horizontal construction driller, a role which saw him traveling between Washington State and Wyoming. He was living in Grants Pass, Oregon, in a house that he shared with his fiancée and her daughter. His family describes him as a very good artist who loves to draw and a fun person to spend time with. TJ's mother, Kimberly, told investigators that he'd traveled to Lakeland in Florida from Oregon on the 5th of December that year, since he was about to start an exciting new job that would see him living closer to his family, which she was very excited about. She then exchanged several text messages with TJ on the 9th of December, while he was on his way to Tampa to sign papers relating to his new job. When he was done there, he was supposed to travel to Lakeland, where he was meant to attend onboarding for his new role. But he replied to one of her texts saying, "My GPS, my GPS," and she didn't think much of it, as she assumed that he'd just gotten lost along the way. TJ's fiancée stated that she spoke to him on the phone on the 10th of December at around 2:30 a.m., and he told her that his red Dodge pickup truck had run out of gas. Worryingly, he then added that he had no idea where he was and that he was walking around, presumably looking for a gas station. He then made a series of nonsensical statements before running into the nearby woods, after which the line went dead. TJ's fiancée phoned his mother the following day to ask if she'd heard from him, and when it became clear that no one had had any contact with him, his fiancée filed a missing person report with the Grants Pass Police Department. Timothy was last seen on the 10th of December by witnesses close to the West Ponce de Leon Boulevard and Highway 98 in Citrus County. 4 days later, his truck was found empty in Brooksville and there was no sign of him. The nearby woods were searched by a team called the Essentials, but despite covering as many as 100 miles, no further clues were found until 3 weeks later, when they happened upon a pack of cigarettes and a construction vest that are thought to have belonged to him. It should be noted that TJ struggled with an illegal substance addiction in the past, but that he'd been clean and sober for several months before his disappearance. Investigators have speculated that he may have relapsed and suffered a paranoid episode at some point, causing him to abandon his trucks and run into the nearby woods. Nico Tustoni, the president of the Essentials organization, added that a couple reported seeing TJ walking southeast on Highway 98 in Citrus County, but this lead has failed to yield any positive results. Tustoni has added that the search dogs lost TJ's scent near US 98, and he's certain that something happened there since his scent simply disappeared with no explanation. TJ's family is hopeful that they'll receive new leads soon and that he will be found alive. In March of 2023, a set of human remains was discovered by Pasco County deputies in an area about 17 miles from where TJ's truck was found. His family then provided information that TJ had a metal rod in his right leg, and when the VIN was checked against the remains that were found, it was confirmed to not be a match, and his family was relieved, though the remains have still not been positively identified. He's described as having red hair and brown eyes. He stands at 6 foot 1 inches tall, and at the time of his disappearance weighed 175 pounds. His family has added that he has several tattoos that could be used to identify him, including the name Gavin on the lower part of his right arm. He also has the word thug tattooed on his left arm, the letters TJ on his left hand, as well as Madeline, Alaric, Rosalind on his legs, and the name Brady on his back. When TJ was last spotted, he was wearing a baseball hat, blue jeans, a cowboy buckled belt, cowboy boots, and 2 dog tag necklaces. Anyone who has seen TJ or who has any information on where he might be at present is urged to contact the Hernando County Sheriff's Office at 352-442-4758. Alternatively, you can contact the Grants Pass Police Department at 541-450-6260 or The Essentials at 516-253-0610. At the time of her disappearance in 2018, 28-year-old Sarah Elizabeth Burton had two young sons, one who was 3 years old and another of 8 months. She shared a house with her parents in Joplin, Missouri, and had decided to turn over a new chapter in her life after spending some time in prison in 2010. She'd made good headway in her fresh start as she had a stable job and was in the process of being placed in a residential treatment program. But before this could happen, though, she would mysteriously disappear, and her whereabouts remain unknown at present. On the 11th of July of that year, Sarah lost the use of her car, an SUV that had been gifted to her by her father, when she got into a traffic collision in Pittsburg, Kansas. 5 days later, she got a ride with one of her friends just after midnight, and she then dropped her off near a service road close to 10th Street and Rex Avenue in Joplin. She told her friend that she would make her way to her parents' house on foot from there, but when they hadn't heard from her by the 20th of July, they went to the Joplin Police Department to report her missing. Sarah's friend would later inform her parents that she left one of her shoes and her purse behind in the car, which they found strange. At first, it was believed that her friend was the last person to see her, but investigators then received a report from a witness who had seen her at a house in the 100 block of North Pearl Avenue, a while after her friend had dropped her off. That house was then searched on the 18th of December by investigators along with the 4-state search and rescue team and a team of cadaver dogs. They also covered 2 apartments in the house as well as the basement, and 2 empty lots next to the house, but they were unable to find anything to progress Sarah's case. 2 days later, another property was searched in Pittsburg, Kansas again, with the assistance of cadaver dogs. Investigators have declined to state what the address of the searched property was, but did mention that a house, 2 outbuildings, and the surrounding area were searched, but again with no positive results. Sarah's mother has stated that the second property has been searched more than once, and added that a possible suspect in Sarah's disappearance may have been identified, but these claims have not been confirmed by the authorities. Following a tip that was submitted reporting that a certain property may be tied to Sarah's case, a third search was conducted on the 2nd of April, 2019 in Newton County with the assistance of the Ozark Drug Enforcement Team. A team of divers searched a pond near the property, and FBI crime lab technicians were on hand to process any clues that were found, but this time investigators declined to say whether anything of use was found, and they've also remained tight-lipped about other factors in the case. They've never stated what Sarah and her friend were doing before she was dropped off at the service road, and they've never revealed what that friend's identity is. It's also not been revealed how she eventually made her way to the first property that was searched, or who the witnesses were who reported seeing her inside that property. Though Sarah was dealing with a few legal issues since she was out on bail for the possession of an illegal substance, her family didn't believe that this would cause her to intentionally disappear, since there was a good chance she could have had 2 of the charges against her dismissed, with a third possibly being suspended, and they believe something untoward has happened to her. Investigators have stated that they also believe Sarah has fallen victim to foul play, and a $5,000 reward is being offered to anyone who can supply them with information that leads to her whereabouts or the culprit who's responsible for her disappearance. Sarah is described as having brown hair and blue eyes. She stands 5 foot 7 inches tall, and at the time that she went missing, weighed around 165 pounds. She also has a visible scar on her forehead that could help identify her if she's spotted. The last time that she was seen, Sarah was wearing a white and purple blouse with blue jeans and flat black shoes. Anyone who has information on Sarah's case is asked to contact the Joplin Police Department at 417-623-3131. Sarah's NamUs case number is MP51615. In June of 2023, 27-year-old Gwendolyn Brunel, better known as Gwen, from Boise, Idaho, was supposed to be having a good time as she was in the midst of a road trip, but she's since disappeared without a trace and has still not been located. When Gwen was still a child, she developed a deep love for purebred rabbits and eventually raised a few that she was then able to present at rabbit shows. In 2007, she took some of her rabbits to the Western Idaho Fair, where she won the Showmanship Championship title. She was also named Queen of the American Rabbit Breeders Association National Competition in 2011, and was in the process of earning her certification as a rabbit judge. On the 26th of June, Gwen set out from her house in Boise in her gray 2008 Honda Element with 11 of her rabbits to travel to a town just outside of Fresno, California. She told her family that she was going there to meet with a well-known rabbit judge, but she never made it there, as she disappeared before reaching her destination. When the rabbit judge was questioned about whether he had seen Gwen, he stated that he'd never spoken to her and wasn't aware that she was on her way to see him, since they'd never made any plans to meet. Before setting off on her trip, Gwen told her family and her boyfriend that she would keep in touch and that she might stop over in Reno to rest, since it was a very long drive to meet with the judge. Her family and boyfriend, Gerald, started to worry when she suddenly stopped responding to their text messages, and when they hadn't heard a word from her by the next morning, they decided to report her as missing. Gwen was captured by security cameras in a convenience store in Nampa, and in the footage, she can be seen buying some snacks for the trip. But strangely, she isn't wearing the same clothes she had on when she left the house, which is strange since the store is only 20 miles from her house. But it is certain that it was her in the security footage, since she used her debit card to pay for the snacks. Her parents stated that when she left home, she was wearing a blue shirt and Nike sneakers, but in the footage, she's wearing a red shirt and knee-high boots. It was noted that she arrived at the store 3 hours after leaving home, and it isn't known where she was before arriving at the store. Gwen was captured again on surveillance footage the next day at the Sinclair gas station in Jordan Valley, Oregon. She paid for gas and then traveled to a convenience store called Mrs. Z's, where she asked if they sold razors, but was told that they didn't, and just bought some peanuts and bottled water. When she was speaking to the gas station attendant, she told him that she was in a hurry, but when she got back in her car, she stayed there for over an hour, prompting a staff member to walk over and ask whether she was okay, and she stated that she was fine. On the 30th of June, Gwen's car was located at Sucker Creek. A UPS driver would later report that he'd seen the car in that same spot on the 28th while he was having his lunch break. The car was found by a police officer who was in the area for an unrelated accident, and when he spotted Gwen's car, he ran the plates and was then informed that she'd been reported as missing. The car was found unlocked and the keys were still in the ignition. The windows were left slightly open, likely because the rabbits were still inside the car, along with her bag, personal belongings, empty soda cans, protein bar wrappers, as well as her wallet containing her credit cards and driver's license. A short distance away, they found her bathrobe and noted that it was neatly folded and possibly used as a pillow. They also found a water jug that she bought at the convenience store and noted that it was half empty. The area around Gwen's car was searched with the help of her friends and family, who scoured the area on horseback, ATVs, and on foot, accompanied by trained dogs. When nothing was found after days of searching, the search was eventually called off. The next clue came on the 10th of September, when one of Gwen's t-shirts was found stuck to a barbed wire fence about a mile away from her car. A search of that area also turned up no further clues, and Gwen remains missing to this day. The last time that Gwen was seen, she was reported to be wearing a dark t-shirt or top, black leggings, and the same boots she was wearing in the security footage. She's described as having red hair and brown eyes, standing 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighing 130 pounds. If you've seen Gwen or have any information on where she could be, you're urged to contact the Boise Police Department at 208-377-6790. William Arlen Bynum, a 40-year-old man from Big Springs, Texas, suddenly disappeared on the 15th of August, 2003, and his case is one that continues to baffle investigators to this day, as he's still not been found 2 decades later. William is one of 4 siblings, and at the time of his disappearance, he was working as a bartender at the Fraternal Order of Elks in his hometown. He was a Harley-Davidson motorbike enthusiast and was a member of a motorbike club. He was known to keep in regular touch with his family and was in the habit of speaking to them a few times every week. He and his family had made plans to go on a trip to Big Bend in Texas in October of that year, but 2 months before that date arrived, he vanished. Witnesses reported last seeing William at a bar called the San Franciscan on the 15th of August as he left the building at around 2 a.m. He had just signed for a bill of $17 and then left with the man who's not been identified since. It was assumed that he would be going home from there, but his family has not seen him since. He was reported as missing by his family, and his pickup truck was found parked across the road from the bar 2 days later in the same spot where he had left it. After he disappeared, Williams' mother visited all the bars in the area and spoke to staff members in case someone had seen him, but unfortunately, no one was able to provide her with any further information. His bank account and cell phone records have been monitored, but they've remained completely silent since he went missing. Foul play is suspected in Williams' disappearance, and his best friend, Melody Phillips, has stated that 2 people were asked to take polygraph tests and they both failed. She believes that at least one of those people has knowledge of what happened to William. A retired Texas Ranger named Don Williams has stated that he also believes someone knows what happened to William, and he speculated that no one has come forward since they fear for their own safety. His mother has also theorized that he may have owed someone money and that he was harmed because of this, or that his disappearance may have had something to do with illegal substances since he, quote, liked to party. After he was reported missing, investigators searched Williams' apartment but found no evidence of foul play. It isn't known if any other clues were found, but one report states that any evidence that was found had been compromised by the laboratory and would be of no use. More than 100 people were interviewed during the search for William, which stretched over several counties with the use of aircraft and ATVs, but their efforts have failed to turn up any new evidence. There is a rumor that William's life was ended and that his body was disposed of in a well, but it isn't known whether this refers to a normal water well or one containing gas or oil. William was declared legally deceased on the 15th of May, 2008, but strangely, the certificate states that he was injured on the 15th of August, 2003, while it states he passed away on the 12th, which his family finds bizarre. Added to this is the fact that the certificate stipulates a cause of death, which is of course impossible since he's not been located yet. A $10,000 reward is being offered to anyone who can bring closure to William's case. William is described as having blonde hair and blue eyes. He's 6 feet tall and weighed 180 pounds at the time that he went missing. He has pierced ears, wears hoop earrings, and has a tattoo on his right shoulder. The last time that he was seen, he was wearing a white Harley-Davidson tank top with blue shorts and sandals. If you have any information that could further the case of William's disappearance, you're asked to get in contact with the Big Spring Police Department at 432-264-2550. It's remarkable how often a missing person is found to have spent time out with their friends before mysteriously disappearing, which is what happened in the case of 26-year-old Kennedy Walton, who disappeared from St. Louis, Missouri on the 4th of March, 2022. Before her disappearance, Kennedy was sharing a place with 2 roommates in St. Louis, and regularly visited with her mother and siblings who lived in Belleville, Illinois, about 17 miles from her home. On the 3rd of March, Kennedy's car was in bad shape, and so she got a ride with her aunt from Swansea's Metrolink station in Illinois, after which they went to St. Elizabeth's Hospital to pick her mother up. Her mother had just had an operation, and Kennedy had traveled there to help out by taking care of her sisters while her mother recovered, and they arrived at the house in Belleville at around 9:30 p.m. Kennedy had made no plans to go out that night, but surveillance footage shows her leaving her mother's house at around 10:30 p.m., after which she got into her mother's car and drove away. When her mother realized she was gone, she sent a text message at around midnight asking where she was, and Kennedy replied that she was on her way home and would be there shortly. Her mother then went back to bed thinking Kennedy would arrive soon, but when she woke up the next morning at around 2 a.m., she found that Kennedy still wasn't home, and so she texted her again, but this time she got no reply. Kennedy was seen the following day at a bar called Show Me's Sports Bar and Grill, which is located in St. Charles, Missouri. Here, she was reported to have had dinner and a few drinks with some of her friends, one of whom was celebrating their birthday. It was also reported that she left the bar abruptly after 1 a.m. and got into her mother's car, which was parked in front of the bar. When one of her friends went to look for her, they found her sitting in the car, but they noticed that she was crying. When asked if she was all right, She said that she would be fine and that nothing was wrong. She then drove away from the bar at around 2 a.m. when her friends were also leaving, and one of her friends reported that Kennedy passed them at speed on the highway. They then drove to Kennedy's house to meet up with her, but when they arrived, Kennedy was pulling out of the driveway and then drove away. This is the last that anyone saw or heard from her. The following morning, Kennedy's mother filed a missing person report with the Belleville Police Department when she still hadn't returned home, and she started to worry about her safety. It was later discovered that Kennedy's cell phone had been switched off at around noon on the day that she disappeared, but it isn't known whether this was done by her or by someone else or if the battery just died. Her mother's car was found on the 10th of March in St. Louis, about 2 blocks from Kennedy's residence. Her mother reported that several items were missing from inside, and one of Kennedy's neighbors would come forward to report that they'd seen an unidentified man driving the car, and that he was the one who parked it where it was found. He was also seen walking away from the car after parking it. The car was taken in as evidence and dusted for fingerprints, but none of any use were found. Her family has since printed and put up flyers in hopes that they jog someone's memory, but to date, no one has come forward with any additional information. Kennedy's mother has stated that at the time, several other women had gone missing from the area, and she hinted that those cases and Kennedy's may be linked somehow. Investigators have stated that Kennedy's disappearance is still being investigated as a missing person case, but that there's a possibility that she may have fallen victim to foul play of some kind. Kennedy was last known to be wearing a black shirt with black leggings and a black jacket. She has black hair and brown eyes, stands about 5 foot 11 inches tall, and weighs between 260 and 270 pounds. Investigators have asked anyone who has information on Kennedy's whereabouts or any information on her case to contact them at the Belleville Police Department by dialing 618-234-1212, quoting agency case number 2200983. Kennedy's NamUs case number is MP90670. A missing person investigation usually starts with someone close to the person filing a missing person report with the police after they fail to make contact with him. But in the case involving 47-year-old real estate agent Tara Jane Sullivan, who disappeared from Weston in Wisconsin in April of 2023, officers discovered that she was missing after traveling to her house. On the 17th of April, 2023, the Marathon County Police Department received a call from someone who reported that they found an iPhone on Ringel Avenue in Ringel, Wisconsin. The phone was lying on the ground near the dead end of the street, and it was quickly found that it belonged to Tara. Thinking that she would be pleasantly surprised to get her phone back, officers traveled to Tara's house on the 18th of April to return it to her. But when they knocked on her door, they got no response. They then looked around the property and discovered that the house's garage had been severely damaged, and they stated that it looked as though someone had backed through the door from the inside, which they found strange. They also found several of Tara's personal belongings strewn around, which left them baffled, and an attempt to locate alert was sent out to law enforcement agencies in the immediate surrounding areas. Later that same day, off-duty officers from the Wausau Police Department were driving along Highway 29 in Shawano County when they spotted Tara's car, a white 2017 Buick Enclave, where it had been left by the side of the highway. When the car was searched, they found no evidence to indicate that a struggle had taken place, and her keys were found in one of the cup holders. They also found her purse, cell phone, credit cards, cash, and identification inside, but found no clues as to where she may have gone. Canine search teams and drones were brought in several times to search the area where Tara's car was located, but this yielded no results. Tara's family reported that she has friends and acquaintances in Fox Valley, but they have no reason to believe that she's there or had any plans to travel there. Investigators stated that they'd looked at Tara's phone for any clues as to how or why she disappeared, but were unable to find anything helpful. They reached out to members of the public to ask that if anyone saw anything on the day that she disappeared, they come forward, as any lead, no matter how small, may prove to be significant. Not much further information is available on Tara's case, as it isn't known what she was wearing at the time she went missing, or what her mental state was before she vanished. She's described as having long strawberry blonde hair and green eyes, and stands 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighs around 130 pounds. Tara was in the habit of changing her hair color every now and then, and hence it's uncertain what color it is at present. But anyone with information that could lead to Tara being located is urged to contact the Marathon County Sheriff's Office at 715-261-1200 and to select option 5 to speak to one of the investigators on her case. Tara's NamUs case number is MP104047. When someone goes missing, the people closest to them are usually questioned first, as it often turns out that a partner or family member had a hand in their disappearance. But in the strange disappearance of 26-year-old Jennifer Lynn Wilkerson from Lubbock, Texas in 2004, her boyfriend was quickly ruled out as a suspect after he passed 2 polygraph tests. At the time, Jennifer worked at a business called Nothing But Smokes, and she had aspirations to become a paralegal, which she was pursuing by attending South Plains College, where she was a sophomore. Before she vanished, she lived with a couple in a rented trailer, and on the day she went missing, she'd been at her boyfriend's house. That morning, she left his house and told him that she had to work a shift later in the day. She planned to go straight home to have a shower before getting ready for work, but she never arrived for her shift, and her coworkers as well as her family became concerned when they were unable to make contact with her. When she still remained missing the following evening, her father reported her as missing at the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office. Her family then went to the trailer where she lived and found that her car was still parked outside, indicating that she definitely made it home after leaving her boyfriend's house. They found that the trailer was locked, and strangely, they noticed that 2 sets of house and car keys were hanging on the wall inside the residence. They made their way inside and discovered that all of Jennifer's personal possessions were still inside, except for her tan-colored purse. When the couple that she shared the trailer with was questioned, they stated that they'd assumed that she was still at her boyfriend's house, and that they hadn't received word from her since she disappeared. As mentioned before, her boyfriend was questioned several times and asked to take 2 polygraph tests, which he passed, and he's not considered a person of interest in her disappearance. Her 2 roommates have also been ruled out as suspects. Her boss at Nothing But Smokes was also interviewed, and he stated that Jennifer never contacted him to say that she would be missing her shift, and added that she never collected her last paycheck. Another strange detail in Jennifer's case is the fact that investigators have stated that they were on the lookout for a suspicious vehicle that may have been involved in her disappearance, though they've not elaborated, and it isn't known how the vehicle may have been connected to her case. They described the vehicle as a small black truck that sat close to the ground. It may also have had tinted windows and decals in the back window, and could possibly have had hydraulics installed. They further revealed that it had smooth hubcaps and likely had out-of-state number plates. It isn't known who the driver of the truck is or how they might be involved in Jennifer's disappearance, and at present, the truck has never been identified and its owner remains unknown. Jennifer's family reported that in the weeks prior to her disappearance, she'd made plans to visit them in New Mexico, and hence they believe she didn't decide to vanish of her own free will. Many people who are following Jennifer's case have pointed out that another woman who went missing in the Lubbock area around the same time was eventually found deceased in a landfill in 2006. But investigators have stated that they found no evidence that the 2 cases are linked in any way. Jennifer's best friend, Kelly Johnson, has speculated that Jennifer may have become involved with some unsavory characters who were involved with illegal substances, and that she may have started using these substances as well. But her family has strongly refuted this, saying that they don't believe this to be the case. Kelly added that since Jennifer had many friends from 2 different areas, it's possible that one of them knows what happened to her. But since she didn't know all the people that Jennifer did, it's impossible to narrow down who may have had any useful information. She said that although the last few decades have been hard, since no one knows what became of her friend, she and Jennifer's family will never stop looking for her, and will always hold out hope that she will eventually be discovered. Jennifer stands at 5 foot 5 inches tall, and at the time that she went missing, she weighed around 110 pounds. She also has several piercings in her ears and on her body, with the most notable being her lower lip. During the last sighting of Jennifer, she was wearing a red top with blue capri pants, a dark-colored shirt, and black flip-flops. She also had a tan purse with her that was noted to be missing from her trailer. Anyone who has information on Jennifer's disappearance is asked to contact the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office at 806-775-1600. Or you can contact Crime Line at 806-741-1000. Authorities are currently searching for a missing individual from Stourport. Andrew Bowman is a 61-year-old man who disappeared on the 23rd of November around 11 that evening. The West Mercia police have released a CCTV image of the missing man. It shows what he looks like and what clothing he had been wearing on the day of his disappearance. In the image, he's pictured as wearing dark blue pants and a dark short-sleeved shirt. He has graying hair and a beard. Officers involved in this case have stated that searches and investigations are still being carried out. Andrew had been driving a gray Peugeot 3008, which has since been discovered in Severnside in Stourport. A detective involved in this case, Inspector Warren Matthews, stated that he would appreciate hearing from anyone who has information on the whereabouts of this missing man. He specifies that he'd like to speak to anyone who thinks they may have seen him around the town center that evening. Matthew encourages anyone who may have been driving around the area and has dash cams to come forward with that footage in hopes that they may reveal where Andrew may have been. Additionally, the West Mercia search and rescue teams have been trying to locate the missing man alongside the authorities. Andrew Bowman is described as having a large build and standing at a height of 5 feet and 10 inches tall. It's asked that should anyone see or have seen Andrew, that they make contact with the West Mercia police. Witnesses can call 101 with the extension of 773-2027. Alternatively, you can email warren.matthews@westmercia.police.uk. Information may also be submitted anonymously to Crime Stoppers on 0800-555-111 or on their website crimestoppers-org.uk. Aside from the new release of the image showing the missing man, there's since been no new information that's surfaced. Despite pleas to citizens as well as lines of inquiries, Andrew has still not been found. 59-year-old Steven Johnson disappeared around the 19th of March earlier this year. A CCTV image has since been released showing the missing individual close to Shakespeare Inn in Coalport. This was around 7:40 on the evening of the 19th of March. Steven is said to be from Telford. In the image, he can be seen getting out of a vehicle. He's described as being 5 feet 9 inches tall. He was wearing dark clothing at the time of his disappearance. In the CCTV image that's been supplied, Steven appears to be wearing a mask. Authorities urge witnesses who were in the area at the time to have a look at their dashcam footage and their CCTV in case they captured the last moments of Steven Johnson. Jamie Farrelly from the Mallinsgate station expressed that they're growing increasingly concerned for Steven's well-being, and they're now appealing to the public to assist them by having a look at their dashcam footage if they were in the Coalport area the day that Steven is believed to have gone missing. Inspector Ben Stevens also stated that they're becoming concerned for the man's welfare, and that for several weeks the authorities have been investigating every inquiry that they've come across. Another detail that's also been released by the department is that authorities are particularly interested in anyone who may have seen a man carrying a wooden stool or a small chair on the given date, or if they've come across a similar item around the Coalport or Ironbridge area. It's believed that Steven may have been carrying one of these objects at the time of his disappearance. In images of the missing man, he appears to be wearing black-framed glasses. He has graying hair and a mole on the right side of his upper chin area. Should anyone have any information regarding this missing individual, they're urged to contact 101. Sophie Reeder was only 15 years old when she vanished in 2017. The evening before she disappeared, Sophie had been pacing around until her father told her to get into bed around 11:30. When he woke the following morning, he discovered that his daughter was gone. Patrick Reeder went into his daughter's room only to find a candle burning and her computer positioned on her bed. It's believed that Sophie had left the house in the early morning hours of the 20th of May in 2017. She had been spotted on CCTV journeying along West Davie Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. She was wearing her headphones as seen in the image. Aside from this sighting, she's not been seen or heard from since. A show called In Pursuit: The Missing aired an hour-long episode to bring renewed attention to the missing girl's case. One of the clues that was revealed in this show was that of a calendar on Sophie's wall. The 19th of May had been X'd out. This is one of very few clues that the missing individual has left behind. A Fort Lauderdale detective revealed that Sophie may have been in contact with older men, but no suspects involved in her disappearance have been brought to light. Jennifer St. John, a Fort Lauderdale detective, stated that the missing girl could be in a rather dark situation, which is why the department was appealing for any information that would lead to her whereabouts and her safe return. The authorities also indicated that Sophie had been experiencing some undiagnosed anxiety. The Missing Pieces Network, an organization dedicated to helping the family of missing people, stated that Sophie was vulnerable. They explained that she was attending online schooling and was spending much of her time on the computer. Her mother, Nicole Twist, believes that her daughter had fallen in with the wrong crowd, and that social media, as well as being on the computer and talking to strangers, had ultimately led to her disappearance. Detective Jennifer St. John is particularly haunted by this case. She explains that she constantly thinks about what she can do differently to find this missing person. Sophie had disappeared while out for a late-night walk. St. John stated that the department knew that Sophie would do this regularly, and it wasn't unusual behavior. The only unusual part was when she had not returned home. Court records revealed that Sophie had left the house while a candle was still burning, and about $300 of cash in a bag was next to her bed, and these all indicated that she was not running away. St. John said that Sophie had walked down this street and stayed in this area for a little while, and after this, she headed eastbound on Davie Boulevard. Fort Lauderdale detectives made use of cell tower records, as well as Google account locations, in order to map where Sophie had gone and possibly where she ended up. There were some security cameras showing the missing girl walking through the neighborhood. St. John counted on the fact that Sophie was alone in all of these videos, and aside from that, they were uncertain as to what she was doing in the area. Based on cell tower records, Sophie's phone may have run dead or was intentionally turned off around Southwest 11th Court. Before Sophie had lost her phone signal, investigators involved in the case believed that she was in contact with two individuals in the area. They believed that these two men were somewhat involved in dark, illegal, and dangerous activity. It would be revealed that the men were possibly either traffickers or dealers of some kind. St. John stated that human trafficking is rather prevalent in South Florida, and it's easy for youth to become entangled in it and not even know what they're involved in or how to get out of it. Kirsten Reeder Milhorn, Sophie's aunt, has also organized a fundraiser which has so far raised $6,435 out of a $10,000 goal. She expressed in the description that her niece had been missing for 5 years. Kirsten explained that the Fort Lauderdale Police Department had shown a lack of urgency from the beginning of Sophie's investigation. Investigators had not immediately collected Sophie's computer from her father's home after they were notified of it. Kirsten went on to say that Patrick had taken these items, including his daughter's phone, to the authorities, so that they could gather as much information as quickly as possible and determine where her last location may have been. It's uncertain as to when detectives found the last location of Sophie's device, but Kirsten came to find that the last ping had come from areas known to be frequented by felons and traffickers. Furthermore, 7 weeks after the disappearance, a warrant was issued on the property. Kirsten fears that they'll never know if Sophie would have been found if authorities and investigators had simply acted on the evidence in a matter of hours after Sophie went missing. She then goes on to say that the family had learned of the last known whereabouts from the aforementioned show In Pursuit. She believes that if it were not for the show, they would have only learned of this evidence 4.5 years later. Kirsten further indicated that the department had not taken the appropriate steps in locating the missing girl. St. John, however, works tirelessly in this case, and it's said to haunt her. She believes that her niece is somewhere out there, and that the family is appealing to the public for assistance in locating her, and is raising funds for a private investigator that may assist in bringing the young girl home. The donations are coming from a GoFundMe page titled Help Us Find Sophie Reeder. Additionally, a Facebook page has also been created dedicated to updates on the case as well as spreading awareness. The page is titled Looking for Sophie, which features a missing person poster. A reward of $25,000 is being offered for information leading to the whereabouts of the missing individual, along with the phone number 954-493-TIPS. The missing 15-year-old would now be the age of 21. Many images of this missing girl have been featured on this page to help further the case and in hopes that someone somewhere will recognize her. Sophie's family has never stopped searching for her, and she's additionally being featured on the Missing Kids blog. It's asked that anyone who has any information on this girl contact the Fort Lauderdale Police Department at 954-828-5700. The Fort Lauderdale Police Department's anonymous tip line is 954-828-5534. Another contact that's been listed is 954-828-6677, and an email address of sophietips@fortlauderdale.gov. A home security camera captured the missing father of 5, Jose Jesus Albaran Guerrero, leaving the house on the day that he had gone missing. He was on his way to an odd job from his downtown area home. Jose's son would be spending his 27th birthday hanging out missing person flyers in hopes of finding his father as the temperature began to drop. Jose was 46 years old when he had disappeared. He'd informed his family that he met a man at Sherm's Thunderbird Market situated on West Main Street in Melford. Apparently, this man had offered him the job that he would soon be attending. The job in question was described as a landscaping job. Jose had left his Southern Oregon home in Medford on a Monday afternoon in 2022. His family stated that the last time they saw the missing man was when he had returned in good spirits and had planned to make his grandchildren some hot chocolate after returning with some milk. Ariadna Albaran, Jose's daughter, said that her father had returned home and changed into work clothes and put on a green Oregon Ducks sweater as seen in the video. He was wearing work jeans and boots. He'd even left the house holding a cup of hot chocolate in his hand. Jose had said that the man informed him that he would be at the Sacred Heart Church and that they should meet there. The church is situated 1.5 miles away from Sherm's Thunderbird Market. The Medford Police Department had confirmed that there is an active missing person report out for Jose, but nothing out of sorts has been discovered as of yet. Ariadna had revealed that her mother spoke to Jose that evening, but the call had been breaking up before ultimately dropping. It was around 5 p.m. that day that Jose and his wife had spoken. The last call would be described as heart-wrenching due to the events that followed. She'd asked her husband where he was and if he was at home. He responded saying that he was close to Riverside before the phone call abruptly ended. The family believes that this phone may have run dead. At the time, they were attempting to contact the phone carrier for assistance. Ariadna would go on to reveal that the family is extremely worried, stating that her father had suffered a head injury some months back and that his memory had since been affected. She detailed that there have been moments where he would forget where he was or wouldn't remember certain things. When the man didn't return home, the family would begin to call Jose's phone and local hospitals. They would go on to search for him around town. On the 3rd day of his disappearance, Ariadna stated that they had no luck and believed they were running out of time due to the dropping temperatures. She detailed that Jose does odd jobs that he finds through friends or people of the public, such as this instance, but he had never not returned home after one of these jobs. Jose is said to do a bit of everything, including maintenance, housework, and yard maintenance. He's described by his daughter as being a kind and social person who would help anyone who's in need. He can speak both English and Spanish. At the time of his disappearance, Jose was said to be a height of 5 feet and 5 inches tall and weighed between 157 and 175 pounds. He has hazel and brown eyes. At the time of his disappearance, he was wearing the aforementioned green Oregon Ducks sweater, blue jeans, brown work boots, and a gray hat. A call to the police department was made 48 hours after Jose had initially left the house, and thereafter a missing person report was filed. Volunteers from the community had also jumped in to search for the missing individual and assist in handing out flyers. They additionally aided in raising awareness of Jose's disappearance. Ariadna explained that her mother had been so distraught that she was not eating or sleeping. She furthered that her father is a holder of all of them and he was their rock. On the day of her brother's birthday, Ariadna said that it was her older brother's birthday and that it should be special, but it's not because the family is broken. They're unable to celebrate as they're in a state of mourning, and they're uncertain as to what condition Jose may be in or even where he is. It's reported that some news outlets had requested to speak with the police department, but they didn't have anyone available who would speak with them regarding the case of this missing man. According to Jose's daughter, the department has not found Jose on any of the cameras at the Sherm's Thunderbird Market. Strangely, none of the other businesses in the area that have CCTV have been recording on this particular day that Jose disappeared. KTVL CBS 10 News Medford has a Facebook page that features a video of the area of Jose's home. The worry continues to rise as more days press on without any clues leading to whereabouts or what happened to this missing Oregon man. Additionally, there's been no further information released on who the supposed employer may have been, or if anyone has spoken with anyone at the church in case they may have seen something. The details surrounding the case of Jose's disappearance are certainly strange and suspicious. The Medford Police Department phone number is listed as 781-391-6404. Should you have any information that may lead to the whereabouts of this man, you're encouraged to make contact with the police department. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.